This is the Janine Pirro Show. Now, here's Judge Janine Pirro.
Welcome back to the Judge Janine Tunnel to Towers Foundation Show. Joining us now is Hogan Gidley. You know him. He was National Press Secretary in the 2020 campaign. He was Deputy Press Secretary during Donald Trump's presidency. Right now, he's got so many titles. I'm not going to waste time going through them. But trust me, they're all impressive, as is he. He is my friend, Hogan Gidley. All right, Hogan, it is Sunday morning. There are 2 days left. Is there anything we should have done that we didn't do?
I'm always nervous at these times during campaigns because it's that little window where there's really not much more that can affect the outcome, and you start to second guess everything you've done, and you wonder, is there a data point somewhere that we all missed that would have told us what happened? Like, you didn't know there were 3,000, ferret owners in Michigan, that if you just talk to those people, like, it's some weird stat that everyone goes, well, of course that was obvious. You didn't see that? Those are the things that kind of keep me up at night. And the fact that Donald Trump got 14 million more votes in a reelect last time and still didn't make it to the White House is always concerning, too. So the numbers right now look really good for our side. Early voting is something we've never seen. The deep data shows me the low propensity voters, people who don't typically vote, are the ones making up that early vote. I've been out all over the country now on bus tours and other things. There is not a single speech we give where I ask the crowd who's voted that every hand didn't go up. And then they say, and now we're going to get more people to go vote. And these aren't regular Republican voters. These are new voters who registered this year or who don't really vote that much. Yep, every time. And so that's really important because you think we're cannibalizing our election day vote, meaning instead of voting on Tuesday, they voted 2 weeks early. That's great, but I need more of them to vote. It's less about the date and more about the number. But now that you vote early, that's good because then you can get those people to go get more people to vote, and you don't waste money trying to get those other folks to vote because they've already voted. You can focus them on the ones who still sitting at home. So a lot of good numbers right now, but still 2 days left. You got to get out there and get it done at the last minute.
I said earlier to Laura Trump, who was on the show, I said, I was at a hair salon, and the guy says to me, he said, I haven't decided yet. I said, I didn't believe that there were any undecided voters out there. And so, for the 30 minutes that he was working on my hair, the poor guy he heard me nonstop. I just didn't believe that there were undecided voters, but apparently there are. But in addition to the undecided voters, there are those who, haven't voted yet and think that their vote doesn't count. And obviously every vote counts. I mean, we've seen it over and over, but we've got to constantly remind people that their vote counts. It really does.
No question. And first, I hope your audience joins me in praying for that poor guy who was doing your hair, because for 30 minutes and you just going off on this guy, I'm sure he got an earful of truth, no doubt about it. So good for you.
And he got a really big tip too.
That's good. I would expect nothing less.
Yeah.
Listen, we're talking about a lot of Senate seats and House seats too. Yeah. Ironically, it was New York and California that kept the House in Republican control. That could be the case again. And a couple of those seats came down to just a few hundred votes. One seat came down to 6 votes. So it really does matter, for you to get out there and go vote. Every vote in this country should count, at least once.
Yeah.
Just once for one person, one vote. It's like the Herman Cain 999 thing, God rest his soul. It's like 111. It's one person, one vote, counted only once, but you have to go cast it. And for people out there who don't think that your vote counts or matters, remember, 42,000 votes decided the last election across 3 states, not in one state, but across 3 states. It was around 43,000 votes. That matters when you're talking about each individual state coming down to a few thousand here or there. And so you need to make sure you get out there and do your civic duty. But understand, I don't want to hear you complaining to me if all of a sudden Donald Trump doesn't win and now you're mad about the economy or you're mad about the border, because Kamala Harris has been clear what she's going to do because she's already done it.
Well,
so
you know what?
Complaining.
Listen, if you heard her speech at the Ellipse, which reminded me of the Joe Biden speech, that soul of what was it? The soul of America with the Marines behind him. It was like blood red. It was that same kind of dictatorial background that sent shivers down my spine. Where she says, "Oh, we're gonna close the border." I'm like, I can't. Do people believe this woman when she says something? Although most of the time she's incapable of explaining herself. But, don't they realize, even Bernie Sanders admitted it, she's going to go moderate because she has to for the votes. But that's not who she is. She's the most liberal leftist senator in the United States Senate.
No question. Her record is clear. I was in an Uber in New York earlier in the week, and the driver was telling me, he's like, Kamala keeps promising all of these things, but she's been VP for 4 years, so we know what she would do. Listen, If she really was moderating her positions, there are a couple of reasons that's not true. One is she wouldn't have picked Tim Walz as a VP. That's the guy who's implemented all the radical policies she wishes she could implement on the federal level. He's done it at the state level. Okay? So that's important. Second is, if she really believed that she was going to, close the border, if she really wanted to allow fracking to continue, and I know there would be an absolute revolt on her staff. No one wants to work for her if she's moderate, because they all signed up for the progressive, radical, leftist policy she's been pushing.
Wait a minute. No one wants to work for her now. 94% of her staff is left because of the toxic work environment. I hear she's impossible to work with.
That's true. And they all said about Trump. Trump didn't have people. I said, yeah, but he fired them for not doing their job. People just voluntarily left Kamala Harris.
No, they ran. They ran. Simone Sanders worked for her. You know who she is?
Sure,
Simone Sanders. She is one tough woman. I mean, I admire her strength and her stamina, her determination. But for her not to be able to handle Kamala, I said, whoa, she's got to be bad. But okay, so let's talk about the fact that, these last few days, people have to get out there. But what about the people who were in the hurricanes? I mean, how are they voting? I mean, if they don't even have the ability to get online still, some of them, they're out of their houses. How do you get them to vote?
Well, in places like North Carolina, from what I understand, and I've been on the ground there too, they're not letting that stop them. They know they face something that's very difficult and daunting after their whole lives were upended because of those horrible storms. But they understand the future's at stake, too. And right now, the voting numbers in North Carolina are significantly higher amongst Republicans and Democrats. In fact, you'll remember reports earlier in the week showed Kamala pulled her advertising from North Carolina, and now they tried to put it in Virginia. So I think that's a telltale sign that you're not breaking through. You're not going to do well in the state. You're moving on to other places. So as of right now, Republicans in that early vote far outpacing Democrats, doing their job from much different than they did in 2020, obviously. So this is something like I've never seen before. So hopefully, the same day voter gets out there and votes too. But the earlier you get in there and bank it, the better off. And places like North Carolina are prime examples of that. Remember, John Fetterman in Pennsylvania, he already had 1 million early votes, basically. So by the time Election Day came around, you couldn't make it up. Even if you wanted to, you couldn't. And it turns out that he had enough bank. If Republicans do that now, it doesn't mean they have to be ahead. But if they continue to significantly cut in to what Democrats did in the past and what overperform what Republicans didn't do, then we're going to be in really good shape come Election Day, because right now her numbers are down with white men, with black men, with Latinos, and even women don't have the significant amount of support for her that they expected on their side to have.
Is that right? But she's still ahead with women.
Oh, yeah, still ahead. But Biden was ahead, but not as much. And I'll tell you, a lot of the things people point to abortion as being a problem for the right, and I would argue a lot of that's messaging, because it's their position of abortion anytime, anywhere, up until the moment of birth. That's the most radical. 90% of the people don't agree with that position. But I'll tell you, this trans thing is really cutting into some of those women who spend their time and treasure making sure their little girls are playing soccer or field hockey or swimming and those things. And then all of a sudden a man comes in and takes all of their titles from them. a lot of these suburban moms, they may not say it. They may not vote for Trump, but they're definitely not going to vote for Kamala.
This episode is brought to you by Etsy.
Oh.
Hear that?
Okay. Thank you.
Etsy knows these aren't the sounds of holiday gifting. Well, not the ones you're hoping for. You want squeals of delight. Happy tears.
How did you?
And spontaneously written songs of joy.
I am so happy. Oh, yeah, oh, yeah, oh, yeah.
Okay, the song needs a bit of work, but anyway, to get those reactions, make sure everyone on your list feels heard with handmade, handpicked, and designed gifts from small shops on Etsy. Gifts like personalized jewelry, custom artwork, cozy style items, vintage pieces, and home decor to celebrate all of your favorite people and their specific kind of special. For original gifts that say, I get you, Etsy has it.
Interesting. And Hogan Gidley, that this whole trans gender athletic thing, is just so bizarre. All of a sudden we're faced with that. Young girls have to compete with these trans genders. But the amazing part of it is, what percentage of the population is trans? Why is that being imposed upon us? Who is the person who is pushing it? You have to say to yourself, how big of a bully pulpit do they have where young girls are being intimidated or knocked out in volleyball games where they spike the ball? That this is even happening. How big is their megaphone?
It is not big. Oh, excuse me. Their megaphone's massive.
It's huge, yeah.
But their vote share is infinitesimal. It is slivers of percentages. It is so small. But people also, as you know, want to virtue signal publicly and try and appear as though they're kind of one with the culture on these types of issues. But there are real world consequences. And I think the backlash of this radical woke policy is really what's going to hurt Kamala Harris, because yes, she's radical. Yes, she's a failure. But the people also understand in their little communities, when their daughters and sons are competing in sports in the same leagues, that's weird to a lot of folks. And so they can try to normalize it all they want to. But when their daughter goes into the bathroom and sees a naked man, that's a problem. And they understand that Kamala Harris is the one pushing these types of things. But let me make this one point, and that is, I do think she's so radical, and the Democrats have such radical policies, that a lot of times, to be honest, people don't believe that they really hold those policies. Remember when that story came out that Kamala wanted sex change operations for illegal aliens, taxpayer funded, in prison? And prison. At CNN were like, no, that's not true. And it's like, no, it is. It's so radical, they don't even realize how radical. They don't believe it. And so they're able to hide behind how crazy the policy is because people don't actually trust it.
It is really amazing that America is being confronted with these bizarre policies, whether it's transgender athletes who are literally taking away the dreams of young girls, or the whole idea of, parents being domestic terrorists under the Biden administration with Merrick Garland, or going after Roman Catholics and then, the head of the FBI denying it and then having to admit it, or arresting pro-lifers. Whether you're pro-choice or pro-life doesn't matter, but coming in at 6 a.m, a guy who's got 7 kids and literally having the street lined up with SWAT and everything else to arrest someone who was ultimately acquitted of something that doesn't even amount to a violation. All of the weaponization of the Justice Department by the Biden administration has to absolutely, it has to frighten Americans, because that kind of thing that they have been doing, that, they accuse Donald Trump will do, is so bizarre in terms of the thinking, because Donald Trump didn't do it. Donald Trump didn't prosecute Hillary Clinton. He could have for those emails. She had those classified documents on her emails or iPad. She didn't have anything else. And Anthony Weiner, he ended up having it on his laptop. Donald Trump didn't prosecute. He didn't prosecute for the Clinton Foundation that they couldn't pass a forensic accountant's analysis. And yet, he's going to put everybody in jail. They're the ones locking him up or trying to lock him up. trying to bankrupt him, trying to do everything they can. And in the end, we're supposed to worry about Donald Trump when in truth, they're doing exactly what they accused Donald Trump of doing. And, I've said it before, accuse your enemy of what you're doing as you're doing it to create confusion. And that's Karl Marx. That is Marxism. And that's who she is. That's who Kamala Harris is.
You hit on something there that is so important and absolutely correct, which is Democrats always accuse Republicans of things they are guilty of actually doing. And so when they say he's going to lock people up, okay, but he was already president. He's going to be a fascist Hitler. Okay, but he was already president. Who's the party that is actively working to imprison their political opponent? Okay?
Four indictments. But
remember, who is the party that tried to use OSHA, an obscure government agency, to go after the American people and force them to get a vaccine by mandate? Who is that organization? Who used the federal government to say practicing Catholics who observe the Latin Mass are domestic terrorists? What party said the parents who go to school board meetings and ask questions about men naked in the girls' locker rooms are also domestic terrorists? That's their party. That's what they do. And the whole time the media comes alongside the Democrats, plays cover, carries the water, and says, yep, it's all Trump. It's all bad. Trump is the one out there saying, we're going to get this country back. We're going to make her great again. We're going to go out there for all Americans, regardless of race, religion, color, creed. Kamala Harris goes out there and says, anyone who didn't vote for me is a Nazi. Oh, and Joe Biden thinks you're garbage. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's just insane.
It is insane. And you know what? I just wish that the mainstream media was honest, or at least semi-honest, because there are people who are actually buying into this craziness, who don't pay attention, who don't really look. They just say, oh, yeah, he's a fascist, and that's the end of it. Anyway, Hogan Gidley, I know you've got a lot of work to do in the next 48 hours. I want to thank you for joining us on the Tunnel to Towers Foundation show. Hogan, you're a real warrior. We thank you for what you do. All right, Hogan Gidley, thanks so much for joining us. Take care and keep pushing 48 hours. Take care.
Thanks, Judge.
This is the Judge Janine Show.